Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Axis Mutual Fund. As you know, we keep coming back to you with topics that are trending, or new themes, or new interesting, say, topics in the market, right? Or phases that the markets are going through. I think today's day and age, or rather today's timing, brings to us a very unique feature in the market, which is one of conflict, right? When I say conflict, let's go back a couple of years to think about this conflict that I'm going to refer to and that we're going to discuss later today. Is that this started somewhere in about 2022, where Russia and Ukraine got into quite significant, let's say, a war, which then led to skirmishes in other parts of the world as well. We've seen skirmishes between Iran and Israel on and off. We've seen unrest on our western border. We were almost, in a very we'd locked horns with our western neighbor last year, and we now look at a situation that's occurring in West Asia, which is a full-blown war, right? Which brings us to a point that, as an investor, what should I do, right? Not from a perspective of what should I do with my investments, but is there an opportunity for me to capitalize on these events or on these themes, which is why I have a very special guest with me today, and that's none other than Mr. Mahavir Kaswa. He has over 2 decades of experience in the markets and has also spent some time at the NSE prior to that. So without further ado, hi Mahavir, welcome.
Thank you, Sid, for having me here.
So Mahavir, as you know, we were just talking about it before you came in, that there's been a lot of geopolitical tensions in the last couple of years. We are in the middle of an active war in West Asia. We're seeing a new phase happening in the world, right? Where gone are the days where it's all hunky-dory, it's all peace and quiet, I think skirmishes or unrest is the new normal, perhaps. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. A lot has changed in the world. Like if you look at last 5 years particularly, what we have seen overall in terms of the conflict has been significantly different than what we have seen over the last few decades. Like you talked about Russia-Ukraine wars, US, Israel and Iran war, India-China conflict. Of course, these are some notable ones. And what is going to happen is with this, there's going to be a very high impetus on the defense capability enhancements. What we have seen over the last few years, the defense expenditure has already reached all-time high, which is 2.7 trillion globally. And this has been rising. Of course, usually the defense expenditure is expected to rise. However, what we have seen especially is that last 5 years, the growth rate has almost doubled, which is like earlier the growth rate was about 4 to 5%. And as we speak, the last year, the growth rate was almost 12%. So that shows the world is changing the order, definitely.
So is it right to assume that the world, or rather say the companies who are in this sector, so to say, are actually evolving with the times? So let me take a quick example. If we look at what's happening in West Asia currently, we see a lot of drones being used, a lot of missiles being used. When we go back to our conflict with our neighbor, it was also to do with drones and missiles and a few jets here and there, right? So has the definition of war changed? Like, is it the fact that we don't really need feet on the ground in order to call it a war? Can we just fight a war with, standoff technology?
Yeah, I think exactly, you're spot on. If you look at the technology has evolved, right? Not just in manufacturing, but everywhere. And so is with the war also. Today's war game has changed significantly. To avoid human losses, now there is a high reluctance from every country to have their actual military on the ground. Rather, they prefer using, like you talked about, drones, missiles, advanced radars to defend themselves, using aircraft which are very fast and have stealth capabilities. So this is going to definitely change. The technology has evolved, and the war game in the new modern era has also changed. What is going to lead to ultimately is that enhance modernization of the defense capabilities, and that can further, which means that defense production in India also will probably grow significantly, as well as globally.
That actually makes a lot of sense, right? So we've seen the current government and dispensation talk about Aatmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliance, right? And I think I read recently that that there is a need to be about 75% indigenous in our overall defense requirements. So I think that will be a huge booster shot, right? In order to, because you're going to create so much demand, you need someone to make the supply, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, like you talked about Aatmanirbhar Bharat, right? This has been the theme for many years. Government has been pushing Make in India for years, but this becomes more critical when it comes to defense capabilities. Like, for example, when you are into conflict situation, having a dependency on importing arms and ammunitions during the conflict period can be very risky. So Aatmanirbharta in defense is the utmost crucial. I think the government has put in a lot of efforts to enhance the policies. For example, they have allowed up to 100% private ownership, participation in the defense manufacturing. They have also allowed automatic approvals for FDIs up to 74% of the stake. And separately, government also putting a lot of efforts to boost defense exports. This all put together will really help India go a long way in the defense manufacturing and exports as well.
You're right. If you look at, let's say go back a couple of years, when the Russia-Ukraine war started, Ukraine had enough weapons only to sustain the war for 4 to 5 days.
Yeah.
It needed NATO allies, it needed the US to come in and replenish its stocks in order to sustain the war till date with Russia. And if you juxtapose that to India, I think we've indigenized quite a lot. So we have our own missile delivery systems, we have our own radar systems, we have our own artillery guns, shell manufacturing. The Tejas LCA is a beautiful example. The BrahMos again is a great example which we are exporting. So I think, to Mahavir's point, I think it's important to be self-reliant in such a case. So Mahavir, how do you think, where do you think this is headed? Given the fact that we've like we discussed, there is going to be a consistent demand. There needs to be someone to supply, these requirements.
Right.
So that brings us to a very interesting topic today, which is the launch of our latest NFO, which is Axis Nifty India Defence Index Fund. So Mahavir, let's discuss why an index fund, why a defence index fund? Because we've discussed the need. That's why we've arrived here.
Right.
Why should we use an index route?
I think the index fund is one of the best way to take an exposure to any sector or theme, and it also offers a very low cost exposure to investors. At the same time, it avoids fund manager biases as well. So globally also, as well as in India, we have seen exponential growth of index funds liking by the investors, and the growth of the index fund has been fabulous. Particularly in defense, as you asked for, if you look at the overall universe of a defense stocks that are listed in India is very narrow. So having an active fund on defense can be a challenge because there is a very limited scope for someone to really go through a lot of different set of companies, analyze them and create a portfolio. I mean, if I just look at the current Nifty index composition, there are only 18 to 20 companies are there, which is forming part of the defense index. So that itself indicates us that the news is very limited and concentrated as well.
Right. And let's talk about a couple of these. What are the stocks that make up this index? Can you name a couple? And we know that, I think this is open knowledge, that these stocks that we will discuss, I think they work in explosives, they work in aircraft technology, they either make the fuselage or make engines, they make weapons, guns, artillery shells, etc. So what are these stocks and how have they been performing recently?
Right. If I can step back and actually talk about how the stock selection happens, I think it will be important, and then we can probably move to the composition itself.
Sure.
So if you look at the current composition, the stock selection basically happens through Nifty Total Market Index, which is about 750 stocks, out of which this index is formed. Now, to select the companies, there are certain basic industries that have been identified to select the stocks that are identified in the defense sector, like aerospace and defense, explosives, shipbuilding, and some other allied services. Not just this, but also there are other companies which are probably not into this defense as a category, but they're into different sectors particularly. So in order to identify those companies, the index has an additional quality layer of a stock selection, which is they identify companies that are member of SIDM, which stands for Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers.
Okay.
And the layer to that is those companies should have at least 10% of revenue coming from defense as a theme. So this put together becomes a defense index stock selection criteria, and the stocks are selected every 6 months, which means the rebalancing happen in March and September every year. and to achieve diversification, so that like there is no single stock have excessive weight, the maximum weight of a stock is capped at 20%. So that's how the stock or the portfolio of index is formed every 6 months, and every 6 months this criteria will be used, and the revised company composition will be announced by index provider in advance, and accordingly we'll also rebalance our portfolio.
Right.
Now coming to your question on the stocks, if you look at the largest company in this index is basically Bharat Electronics with a weight of 21%, Bharat Forge 17%, Hindustan Aeronautics again 17%. These are the largest three companies if I can talk about it. And the other companies include Solar Industries, Mazgaon, Cochin Shipyard, Bharat Dynamics, Solar Industries, Astar Microwave. These are some of the companies which are also having good notable presence in the index. The top 10 companies in the index are about 90%. The good thing about this index also is this index has a very good diversified exposure to large, mid, small. About 55% comes to large caps, about 20-25% comes from mid, and remaining is small cap.
Okay.
That's how the index is also composed. And I think you talked about performance. I think that's the most important part. Ultimately, any investment theme should also be backed by some indication of the performance and the risk as well. So as we have already seen, the defense stock has excellent run in the last few years, and that can be very well seen in the index performance as well. If we just simply talk about last 1 year return, as of end of February, the performance has been about 59%, and the 3 year is 57%, and 5 year is 55%. That's a very astonishing performance.
Wait, let me stop you there for a minute. That means if I would have invested 1 lakh rupees in this index, say a year back, I would have made 9 lakhs already.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
I think this is a phenomenal theme. I hope you got that.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense a lot. But at the same time, I just want to caution also, this index also has a bit of a higher volatility than the broader market.
Right.
And of course, it is expected as well, because this is a thematic index, and this has a very high sensitivity to any sector specific or a theme specific changes from a policy point of view, or from any other external news point of view. So this volatility is expected.
Right. So, Mavi, let's go back to the numbers slightly. 1 year 59%, 3 years you said 57%, and 5 years 55%. Those are astronomical numbers. How has the Nifty 500 performed in this period?
Of course, I mean, Nifty 500 is a broad-based one which includes all the sectors put together, and it is expected to have a much more consistent performance compared to the theme particularly. So Nifty 500 performance, if I just started to call out, the last 1 year is about 17%, 3 year is 18%, and the 5 year is 15% approximately.
So I think that this index has effectively tripled the performance according as per the Nifty 500. That's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And like you're saying, if it's got a 55% large cap bias, that at least gives some layer of stability also, while we understand it is going to be a volatile product. Let's jump into something else from here. Defense as a theme, like you discussed, like you said in your introduction, right, that now there is 100% private participation permitted and 74% automatic FDI participation, right? So that obviously means that these companies are no longer just PSUs. We also have large private players in this, therefore ensuring that there is a higher quality filter that automatically comes when these private players operate, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, if you look at overall defense production in India has grown to 1.5 lakh crore, and out of this almost 23-24% is coming from the private players. I think, like you said, the private players will definitely bringing a lot more high impetus on the research. A lot of money will be put forward on the research. I think defense will require a lot of technological improvements and the speeding up the projects. We have had some experiences of very long projects taking very long period to be taking to the final stage and maybe deployment further. I think having private player would definitely enhance those timelines and maybe even cost effectiveness as well, as we see in the future.
Right. I think I can remember another thing that, like you mentioned, that we've seen a rally in the defense stocks already. Is it too late to get into the theme now? Are valuations already too high?
So I'll answer this in two different perspectives. I'll first, since you talked about valuations, I'll answer from the valuations perspective. If you look at the valuations of the defense index particularly right now, it has definitely corrected from the very high valuation, and the valuation earlier was probably easily above the 50p, 55p particularly, and it has come down to close to 45p as we speak probably. It definitely is corrected, but someone may probably have a opinion that as compared to the broad-based index, this is still expensive. Probably yes, if you just compare number by that way. But if you look at the composition and the kind of product they manufacture, these companies basically have a very strategic mode. What I mean by that is these companies are into very niche areas and they barely have any competition. So if you see any segment in the market apart from the defense also, you would easily expect them to command little higher valuations. So in my view, the corrected valuation from 55p to close to 45 or 40p is definitely very attractive, and one can just consider the investment according to their risk appetite. The other aspect that I want to talk about this is led to party, right? Defense as a theme, if you look at it, worldwide is massive. We just started this theme in India over the last 4-5 years, and the real investment universe has grown only last 5 years probably. If you look at the global peers, the defense budget, the manufacturing, the production and export are exponential as compared to India's capacity.
Right.
So I'm looking from that pie. PE valuation is one thing, it's a very short term in nature, but looking at the larger picture, if you look at it, the global peers, it's massive opportunity for us.
Right.
And not just that, but if you look at any corporates also that are into defense manufacturing, look at the valuation, or even the market capitalization. Our largest company market cap is also maybe probably 1/10 or 1/100th of those companies.
Right.
So in my view, I think if the policy support continue in terms of the defense, I think we should have a very good landscape, which can be a very good long-term story for us.
Right. No, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. I don't have the number I just remember at the top of my head, I think our largest defense stock is probably what we spend as an outlay would probably just be the tip of the iceberg of what, say, Lockheed Martin spends on R&D.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you have players like Lockheed Martin who make airplanes which the world has never seen, but they still exist, right? So I think we're still at the tip of the iceberg. I don't think we even hit the tip of the iceberg.
Probably yes.
Let alone anything else. But Mahavir, before we get into some more questions on this, I just wanted to get your views on the changing landscape of defense as a whole, right? So I think I've grown up and I was about 6-7 years old when the Kargil war happened in 1999, and we saw a lot of loss of life. We saw, obviously, because it was in a particular sector, it was only the Air Force, and it was the Army primarily, and the Air Force came in much later to help. In today's day and age, if a skirmish like that broke out, I think, like we've seen last year in one of our operations, that we have the ability to use drones. So I think as a country, I think we value human life a lot more. I think we are dependent more on technology to help us achieve our goals. What are your views on this? Where do you think we're headed?
I think like we already briefly discussed earlier as well, I think the technology has changed significantly. Of course, the value of a human life is always super important for all of us, and again, all these military personnel who are very well trained, they would be of a more importance for us as well. Like saving the life with the help of technology would be of a great importance for us as well. And at the same time, if you are able to sit in a command center and control the war game completely, why not? The use of drones has helped us neutralize a lot of potential terrorist targets, which is something was the ultimate target for us. So definitely.
Yeah, I think that brings me back to I know you mentioned the 55%, 59% returns. I can't let that go so easily, because for a few of the viewers of this channel, they know that I primarily invest via SIPs, and I have some very interesting data here that shows that if I would have started a 10,000 rupee SIP in this underlying index, in 5 years the in amount invested would have been 6 lakhs, but the market value would have been 21 lakhs.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
I think that's another reason why I think we cannot ignore this theme, let alone the numbers, let alone the fact that we're moving more towards a technology, more technology oriented. We're going more towards a place where we value human life, but we not even scratch the surface of AI. We've seen a lot of AI being used in our skirmishes and in the Middle East right now as we speak. Drones are now being driven. They're fed that okay, you need to follow this heat source, and they chase down and they hit their target. Similarly, in our case, we have drones, we have radars which are able to. We have drones which are able to jam radars, and vice versa. We have radars which are able to jam drones. Right. So, what do you think on where are we on the AI scale in defense?
I think AI is evolving, right? Like the AI game particularly has come a lot in terms of the broader manufacturing or the broader global sense. But in defense particularly, I think the AI has been over the last story of the last maybe 6 months or 1 year probably. But in my view, AI will play a super important role because there are certain things which will be very difficult for us to respond in a very quick time, wherein the AI will come and play a very important role in particularly responding to the evolving situation. So I think AI can be crucial as we move forward. If I'm not wrong, recently DRDO has also placed a contract or the offer offer document wherein they want to induct some stealth jet which are driven through AI as well.
Right.
So those are the very interesting updates, and probably as we move forward, we'll learn a lot more about the use of AI in defense sector.
Right.
But I just want to step back and talk about the SIPs that you talked about it. As I mentioned earlier, the defense is a very volatile thing. And one of the way to mitigate that volatility and still achieve a good wealth creation through systematic sectors particularly would be using SIP. I think SIP will help you to be part of that investment theme in every up and downs as well. And as the number speaks, it can probably make wonders for the investors over the longer term as well.
Right. Interesting. Who do you think is the ideal investor for such a product?
So it's a great question, and had it been Warmer Broad-Based Index, I would have been probably everyone can consider this index. I would have the simple answer would have been like that. This is a more riskier index. This index has a lot more dependency on the government decisions. Any sudden change in the policy of supportive to defense to maybe neutral or maybe on negative can have a negative impact. Not just that, but also any conflict of escalations or de-escalations may also have a very quick, sharp response from investors to this theme as well. So definitely this will have a very high risk kind of a thing for the investors. So someone who understands this risk should definitely consider investing to this thing. I think if we just talk about anyone having a long-term target of 5 to 10 years as an investment horizon and a reasonable risk appetite, should definitely consider allocating the money. Only thing I would probably talk about is that the allocation should not be significant, because this is more suitable for the satellite allocation.
Right.
So maybe anywhere between 5 to 15% would be a reasonable allocation of overall portfolio to this thing.
So if hypothetically if a 30-year-old investor like me has 100 rupees to invest at the end of the month, so you're saying my investment in the defense, a theme like defense should be between 5 and 15%?
Yeah, I mean, as per your preference. Someone may want more as well, why not? But generalized answer to this could be more 5 to 15. That sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Right. So I think with that, let's also tell our viewers that we actually have an NFO that starts today, which is the Axis Nifty India Defence Index Fund. NFO starts today on the 10th of April and closes on the 24th of April. Right. So Mahavir, if you could just probably help us summarize, we've had a very intense discussion. I think we hit a few serious topics like war. We also discussed how AI is here to stay, and how drones are actually the present, let alone the future. We don't even know what the future holds for us. But I want to understand from you in a nutshell, why is it that someone should consider investing in this theme today, number one, and number two, you've at the cost of repetition, but this is clearly expected to be a satellite investment portfolio, or rather satellite investment from an investor's perspective. So just if you can help us summarize and again help underline why they should be a satellite portfolio.
Sure. So I think first why, and then why satellite. I'll answer this way. If you look at the world order has changed. Like from last few decades, maybe 3 to 4 decades, we have seen world was predominantly unipolar, which means there was a de facto one dominant force in globally, and which is moving away from dominant force, single force, to a multiple forces, like with the emergence of China, India, Russia, Brazil. These companies are a lot of these countries are now putting a lot more assertive moves and making the presence visible for the people globally. So this would lead, a multipolar world would lead to more defense spending, enhancing defense capability for every those segments as well. So definitely that's one reason world order is changing. Second is like technology. We spoke in detail about that. The wars, the new modern wars would be fought not on the ground, probably maybe more in the air, and that will lead to a lot of modernization of the equipments of defense equipments, and again a lot of defense budget will be rolled out. We just learned how the US Israel fought with Iran, and barely people were on the ground there fighting with each other, but still there were a lot of missiles and drones were fought and destroyed as well, by the way. So that will also require replenishment as well. So technological upgradation is another reason. Apart from this, geopolitical tension, this is one thing which will remain forever. Like historically we have seen geopolitical tension will be there, and one has to maintain certain minimum defense capabilities. That's also now particularly for India. These all three of course applies to India, but also globally. Now, particularly for India, like we have all learned, there is a lot of effort on Aatmanirbhar, self-reliance particularly, right? So government is putting a lot of efforts to increase the defense production. We are one of the largest importer globally of defense equipment, and government want to significantly reduce that import dependency to domestic manufacturing. So that's going to be another impetus to local domestic manufacturer. There is a lot of private participation being welcomed by government. This all thing put together, I do see there's a good potential for defense as a theme, and that's why I believe it can be a good long-term bet for the investors to invest in the defense sector.
I think export is also a great theme, right? Where I think our net exports for defense equipment last fiscal was about 23,000 crores, which is almost doubled to 38,000 crores.
Yeah,
So that's phenomenal.
I'll step back.
Yeah.
2020 it was barely 10,000 crores, 8 to 10,000 crores, which has gone to 23,000 crores, and now is a latest report talks about 30,000. So definitely there's a huge boost, and government is vocally talking about that they want to boost the defense exports. This again ultimately means from investment theme point of view, a lot of export opportunities, the revenue generation, then so is ultimately profitability would be there for the lot of defense companies, and all this will come to a very concentrated universe, which is around 20 approximate stocks. So a great opportunity for investors.
And like you also said that because this is still an early, this is a younger index as compared to the larger, say the Nifty 50 or the Nifty 500. So that means as and when more and more stocks keep getting added to the universe, the size of the pot will also increase. So therefore, our investors will have the opportunity to potentially increase the number of shares they hold as well, or other number of stocks they hold as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like why not? Absolutely.
Great. I think with that we've come to the end of the session, Mahavir. So thank you for being so patient and answering all of my questions. I apologize to Mahavir and to the audience in case we've repeated a few questions, but just the fact that we really had to hit those questions, especially in terms of returns as well as on the risks. We understand that this is an extremely risky theme. But yeah, for the investors who have a risk appetite and who have the ability to get into a theme like this, I don't think we can ignore it. I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And thanks for having me.
Anytime, Avi. We're happy to see you and we'll hopefully see you soon. So for the folks who joined us, thank you. We will see you again very soon. Do remember our NFO is open. It is open from the 10th of April 26 to 24th of April 26. You can buy this product on our website, visit accessmf.com, or you can download our app. It's available on the Google Play and the Apple App Store. You will have a page or a button you can invest in the NFO in under 2 minutes.
Excellent.
Right? It's also available on leading marketplaces. So I hope you explore the product. Feel free to share any comments, any questions in the description below or in the comment box, and our team will reach out and answer those queries happily. You can do that on YouTube or on our social channels, and we're really happy to help. So with that, thank you, Mahavir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.